Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session called Raise More Money for Your P2P Campaigns by Modernizing Your Approach to Data. It's one of the sessions in today's Peer-to-Peer World Virtual Conference brought to you by 4 companies that serve nonprofits and have come together to share their unique experience and knowledge with the sector. These companies are the Armbruster Consulting Group, Cathexis Partners, Donor Voice, and Frakture. I'm David Hessekiel, the president and founder of Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum and Peer-to-Peer Fundraising Canada, and I'm very happy to be introducing each session in today's virtual conference. We at Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum produce content throughout the year, culminating in annual conferences. We actually have one coming up on November 1st for Peer-to-Peer Fundraising Canada, which will be in Toronto, and another that we'll be releasing the program for March 1st and 2nd in Atlanta for Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum. You can learn more at peertopeerforum.com or p2pfundraisingcanada.com. During the session, feel free to submit questions in the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel. The speakers will answer questions towards the end of the session. Please note that the session will be recorded and will be made available online after the session is over, as well as you'll have access to the presentations themselves. So with that, I am very pleased to turn it over to Michael Servino.
Great, thank you very much. Hello everyone, I am Michael Servino, the Chief Bot Evangelist here at Frakture. I'll introduce myself a little bit more in a moment. What we are going to cover in the hour that we have together is how to modernize your approach to peer-to-peer around the subject of data, managing and the kinds of data and the way you're using data for reporting and for integration. It's getting more and more important to manage and be able to report. And in this case study with Ovarian Cancer of Canada, and we'll have a couple of other examples at the end, to really dig into how automation and improving data management helped ovarian cancer with their walk this year. So that's the top line, and I'm going to turn it over to Laura to introduce herself and a bit about ovarian cancer.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So, yeah, I'm Laure Sabatier, Communication Associate at Ovarian Cancer Canada. So Ovarian Cancer Canada is the only charity solely dedicated to overcoming ovarian cancer in Canada. What I do there is, among others, the website design, emails, and also web analytics. The Ovarian Cancer Canada Walk of Hope is a special event to everyone in the organization and the community of ovarian cancer, as it is the largest one-day event dedicated to overcome the disease in Canada. And it's also an opportunity to everyone in the community to meet and celebrate their survival and also the women they love, and as well raise awareness across the year while they are fundraising. So more about the Walk of Hope. The walk started as a grassroots event in 2002 by an ovarian cancer survivor to bring together people affected by the disease, and that was a moment to celebrate. It happens every year in September. While this is a one-day event, the campaign is active for several months prior the walk to encourage people to register, fundraise, so the peer-to-peer fundraising, and as well donate. Year after year, it passed from a grassroots event to a big, very big national event, the largest in the country. The community has grown together to make this event one of the largest fundraiser, if not the largest, for ovarian cancer through peer-to-peer fundraising. And the peer-to-peer fundraising means the dedication from the community to overcome this disease. So more about Ovarian Cancer Canada. It's as I've said earlier, it's the only charity dedicated to overcome the disease, and it's a disease which 2,800 women are diagnosed every year with. in Canada, to give you an idea of who we are representing. Our work is enabled by the generosity of donors and the dedication of volunteers, and we highly value their effort. The Walk of Hope is an important revenue generator for the organization and enables our three main missions. So we provide support via webinars, support guides, and also by partnering with support groups. We also have programs to raise awareness and to the general population, but also we lead government relations efforts to inform politicians and encourage change. And finally, many donations we receive are to fund much-needed research projects to improve prevention, detection, treatment, and quality of life for the women living with the disease. And now to Michael.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Michael Servino. I've been working with nonprofit organizations for about 2 decades in marketing, fundraising, advocacy engagement, and my role here at Frakture is to really champion helping organizations to use automation and data warehousing, which are made possible by all types of cloud computing and cloud storage and new ways of programming and engineering and scripting that allows organizations to be able to do more with their systems. And as we like to say here at Frakture, get to the next thing on your list because bots can take care of and handle much of the routine type data work that human beings are spending time on. And my favorite thing about my job is when we hear from our clients that our bots are really helpful and what can they do next. Just to give you a sense of who Frakture is, we're really a modern way to think about working with your systems. That many organizations are using lots of different tools now for engagement, for donations, for peer-to-peer fundraising. You have your classic donor database, your database of record. You may be using social. You may be pushing and targeting on Facebook ads and Google ads and many different channels of trying to engage your supporters and promote your events. And in many cases, a lot of that work of moving data back and forth and matching up segments and creating targeted groups is very manual for organizations. And at Frakture, we use robots to be able to get systems talking. And we'll see with Ovarian how we were, Cancer Canada, how we were able to put robots to work to take care of much more efficiently some of the automated reporting. Just to give you a sense of what a bot is, you probably heard a lot about this idea of bots and their ability to automate or artificial intelligence. And for Frakture, what a bot is a program, a script that is written to access information in a system, to be able to get at information through really logging in, pointing and clicking as a human would through a web interface to run a report, to download data, to upload data. Bots can also be written to read in and out of APIs or read directly in and out of databases. So they're essentially, scripts that run and are kind of a cron, what's called a cron job or a scheduled job to go get data, do something with that data, process it, match it, dedupe it, aggregate it, report on it. Bots can do any kind of repetitive rule-based job that a human can do, only bots love doing it where human beings are often bored to death about doing it. We're going to take a look specifically with Ovarian Cancer Canada, how bots were put to work. So I'm going to turn it back over to Laura to talk a bit about the challenge for Ovarian Cancer Canada and what was needed from an automation perspective to improve the walk experience.
Yes, thank you. So indeed, the walk has some challenges because it is a complex event, mainly because of the large number of registrants, the number of locations as well, and the many ways to make a monetary donation. So every year, we prepare fundraising and registration reports for each location, to be ready on the event day. We also feature the top fundraisers across all locations during the whole fundraising campaign. So last year, both local and national types of reports were made manually from countless hours of work. So for the local reports, we include online donation as well as offline donation if the transaction was actually processed. Those two types of donation are actually in two different types of system. One is Razor's Edge and the other one is Illuminate Online's TeamRaiser. While there is a basic connector between those two systems, it did not support the kind of data we needed to do those reports. Then for the national report, Illuminate Online offers the possibility to have local leaderboard per TeamRaiser event. So a TeamRaiser event in our case is concretely a location, because the Walk of Hope, as I've mentioned earlier, is in about 40 locations. So we have 40 TeamRaiser events. But there is no solution to make a leaderboard, one leaderboard to feature specific and several TeamRaisers. So we had to be looking for a way to save human time. Those reports per location are necessary for the local event organizers because they have to know who they should expect. And it's also a way for us to know who are the top fundraisers so we can award them. Recognition of all the special people we have is very important to us. We also feature the national leaderboard to present the top fundraisers across the country, so all locations. Last year, the national leaderboard was made through manually compiled report for each location, and then implemented in the website manually as well. And each team and each individual name will hyperlinked to their respective pages. So the web page was updated every week during the campaign and every day during the last 2 weeks prior the event. So you can imagine the number of hours it took every time the table had to be updated. So it was clearly a waste of human resource doing this tedious task, and a solution was really needed. So that is where we use the bots of Frakture.
Great. And so I want to just sort of share what the solution looked like. The two systems, as Laura said, were the Razor's Edge and Illuminate Online. And the Frakture bots could read the data from those systems. And so every day we would pull the offline donations, get a file of the offline donations from Razor's Edge, and the Illuminate bot would log into Illuminate and run the TeamRaiser reports for the specific event, grab those reports, and in both cases, take that data, which were CSV files, and the bots could unpack that data and merge it and filter it and push it into a data warehouse in Amazon Web Services in the cloud. So the idea here was, taking the Excel or CSV file reports that you're all probably very familiar with logging in and running, and the bots know how to get those reports, unpack them, parse them, and push them into a data table. And then from that data table, we were able to, the bots were then able to run rules to match up people to their donations, match up those people and donations to the particular event that they were a part of, and produce data views, essentially create those tables that Laura was talking about of the national leaderboard, of the local event report, of the local event list of people, local event list of teams, and people by teams. All of that was automated by the bots to create those output reports. So you can see, the idea is Razor's Edge and Illuminate Online. The bots are doing the work of grabbing the data and pushing it into a temporary data warehouse where that data could then be matched up and filtered and prepared and tables created, which then fed reports. It's not magic. but it's just very well coordinated routine jobs that stack up one after the other in kind of a daisy chain of production line, if you will, those bots managing that data job. What happened next is that there are two outputs that were created from this in an automated way. For each location, right, so there were over about 40 locations. You can see team raiser events. And what used to happen is that each of those event reports had to be pulled down and mashed up manually in order to create reports. What the bots did was created each individual event would produce automatically 3 PDF reports of the events. And we saw those a little bit before, a list of individuals, a list of teams, and then the team support report. Those were kicked out into the Google Drive, which could be shared that way. They were also emailed off to the Ovarian Cancer Canada team so that they could then take those reports and email them directly to the location leads at each of the locations. So just to give you a sense of the scope of this, 40 locations, 3 reports for each location, 120 reports being refreshed every single day by this automated process. The other piece that was done was the national leaderboard. So this, I'm just going to pop over. Hopefully this opens. Let me close my email. There we go. So this is the page on the website of the top teams and of the top participants. And this is across all 40 events. And the way that this worked was that in the same data that the bots were pulling from for the reports, for the individual location reports coming back here, that same data set that was created in the warehouse that produced those individual walk reports by location, the same data was used to match up and rank the best performing fundraising teams and the best performing fundraising individuals. That was then pushed to a web page through JavaScript that Frakture hosted within that data, the same instance hosting the data warehouse. We were hosting that script with all of that data. That's included on this page, so that Ovarian Cancer Canada, from a technical perspective, just needed to have an include of this particular set of data, top teams and top participants, and a slight versioning of it in French. We'll talk a little bit more about that because Ovarian Cancer Canada presents its site in both French and in English. So there were sort of 2 versions which could format out the dollars and the titles. So the whole idea here is that the work for ovarian cancer was just to simply do an include of data that was being processed from the same data being used for the daily reports. To give you a sense of what's happening is that the bots every day were running 2 different reports out of the peer-to-peer fundraising system, out of Luminate. One of those reports was pulling performance by team across all of the Team Raiser events and pulling participants from all Team Raiser events. The challenge is that that pulls across not just the 40 for this particular event, but there are other fundraising events that were also wrapped up in that data pool. And the bots would filter out those events that weren't needed. We had a list of includes and excludes. So in a very automated way, be able to get a much bigger set of data, filter it specifically for the events that were needed, and then be able to match up teams and participants and list the results. So this could then be easily embedded and skinned, what I'll call skinned or themed, to match the Ovarian Cancer Canada site. So that's the process, using bots to grab data, mashing that data up in the warehouse and housing it. And so by being in the warehouse and not stuck inside the core systems, there's a lot that we could do with that data to prepare it and push it in different output formats in order to produce reports by location and display a leaderboard.
Yeah, so this leaderboard has been very much appreciated, and also all the reports from the organization. And for us, we're all about serving the community. So having this bilingual option, and that the French was respected in every detail. So for instance, it's just the fact that the dollar sign had to be after, all that type of details was important. And the national leaderboard is not just appreciated by the organization, but especially by the community, and it's even expected by the community, because fundraisers are very proud of their hard work, and it's a minimum that we can do to feature them. The national leaderboard is also useful as as we organize pricing for the national top fundraisers. This leaderboard is very important for the organization, as we feature also this leaderboard in marketing emails, and it's very important for the community. While the leaderboard, for instance, at the beginning, it was very new. We just had received the JavaScript. A location was missing from the bots, and a top fundraisers in one of those missing locations actually called us and flagged that there was an error because she was supposed to see herself in there. So you can see that the community is active and trying, seeing, and they expect to see themselves when they have to in this leaderboard. So the way it was done this year was much more convenient than last year, and respected perfectly. So I'm repeating myself. It respected perfectly the design of the website, and again, I'm repeating myself, but it was very important for us. It saved the organization many human resource hours, which could be then invested in other projects and make much better quality work for other projects as well.
And as she said, you know, we are automation that occurs, and ask the question, you know, what worked well, and it would be even better if. And as we noted, there was, you know, initial rollout, some glitches with what teams were included. You know, one of the things that we identified would be even better to do for next time and for next year is to start earlier in the process, and really to allow some more time to do a little more QA, give time for appropriate QA. I think with all of the activities running up to the event, we got very time crunched at the end, and there will always be in these types of little glitches and optimizations that need to be made. So it's even better if we would have allowed some more time so that there was less pressure leading right up to the deadline in order to get things right. And the second thing that would have been good was we began the conversation in like May of this year for the automations and for the leaderboard and for the reports. That was kind of the initial kickoff meeting, and there was a great deal that we talked about that we would want to do, of things to include, and some of those changed over the course of June and July. So as we got to implementation, you know, by August, the time lapse between when we first talked about what ought to be on the checklist of things we were going to do, and then getting hands-on in doing the setup of the bots and the setup of the automations, there were some things that just had gotten forgotten, or and that were missed. And so it would have been much better if we had done more documentation in those early conversations. I think we were all very much in agreement around what could be done and what the priorities were and what needed to be done, and just not good enough or clear enough documentation on this is the list of things that we're going to do. And so those were the two big lessons learned, is you know, giving a little more time for QA and for validation of the automation, and then early in the process to have done a bit more documentation on the specifics of what data outputs needed to look like. And so we're kind of excited for what's next year. we have the foundation in place now for the automation. That's the great thing, is that this is sort of step and repeat, rinse and repeat for next year. You know, the bots are in place, and one of the things about bots and automations is things may change with the underlying technologies between now and next year. Illuminate may change its reporting interface. The Razor's Edge data output may be slightly differently. So there may be tweaks, but you know, that's part and parcel of support for automation, is support for those types of system changes. The other piece is really focusing on the human time of what the next things are. I think this year there was time invested in getting this automation set up, and that time will be saved next year. So there's focusing that human time on a number of next things that could be done. And I was hoping, Lori, if you want to talk about what some of those things are you were thinking that next year that human time could be put to make the walk even better.
Yeah, so for yeah, for us, having this more time would be also making more pricing, for instance, earlier at the national level, and it's mainly also a better way to know our community at the national level, and it really helps. It saves time to find out who is the best in what, and leads stewardship culture, stewardship emails, and knowing the community is really the best we can do, because after all, this is one of the trends in fundraising is personalized communication. So yeah, that's the main thing I would say.
Great. And we just wanted to turn it over to you who've been listening. If there are questions you have about this automation, about Ovarian Cancer Canada's peer-to-peer fundraising walk, we're open for questions.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Michael and Laura, for a terrific and interesting presentation. And we welcome our listeners to send in questions. Right now, we don't have any present, but I think they're probably scratching their heads and cogitating. I have a couple. One is, could you define a little bit longer the time it takes to actually create the bots to sort of suss out what is needed and create the systems?
Well, for the bots, oh, sorry, yeah, Michael, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. You start and I'll follow.
Oh, no, actually, I thought the question was for me, and it was directly addressed to me, but I think for actually creating the bots, that's a question for Frakture. I can also only say what time it takes when there is no bots. So please, Michael, go ahead.
Sure. So one of the approach that we take, and there's lots of different ways to go at this. For Frakture, the bots exist already. So we have a Illuminate bot that knows how to run report writer reports, that knows how to pull data from the API. So deploying Illuminate bot literally takes getting a username and a password and then configuring the reports and automating the bots to run it. So we can spin up a bot for Illuminate or Donor Drive or Engaging Networks, Classy. We have over 100 bots for different systems. And the basic abilities for those bots can be up and running in a couple of days. Oh. Then there's the work of taking that data and filtering it, mapping it, and transforming it. And that tends to be custom to each client and can range anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks to get that customization and the iterations of that data flow, what we call a data flow, to where the basic data coming out of the system is massaged and transformed and appended and delivered in the specific format to the location that the particular client wants. With this particular setup, as I said, we began the conversation back in May and really put fingers to keyboard to install the bots and get the data flow going around end of July, beginning of August. So it took about 4 weeks. We would have liked it to have taken 2 weeks, and it took a little bit longer the first time around to get this set up. Does that answer the question?
Yes, and I'm not trying to reveal uh, privileged information, but there's got to be, I imagine, a cost-benefit analysis in terms of how much time is being spent on manually doing these sorts of things versus the time or the expense that it takes to have you create these programs. Can you talk a little bit about how you've counseled folks on that?
Well, that's an information that I would not be. I just simply don't have. I'm sorry. I can only tell you how much time you
Hmm.
would spend if you do it manually, and then you calculate yourself, and if you know that how you pay your employees. So, for instance, I was especially close to the national leaderboard more than the report that were made for the each location. But to do this national leaderboard, every time you had to update it, I think you would have to spend half a day at least
Oh
just
my
doing this.
gosh.
So that was every week. After, when it was closer to, and no, I was going to say mistake. I was going to say if you get closer to the workday, you do it every day, and it's small updates that change. But actually, it's false, because when you get closer to the workday, there are so many donations. Like, I'm doing
Yeah.
graphs because I'm the designer and I'm also the web analytics. But when I'm doing graphs, sometimes the lines are like mountains. It's a huge peak. So it takes a lot of time. And um, yeah, the woman who was doing this last year was incredible. She accepted to do all this, but it was not her main strength, and she had so much more to offer. So that's why I was saying that it was a waste of human resource.
Excellent.
And just to give you a sense, when uh, Laura's predecessor, we began this work really a year ago in the initial conversations to do that cost-benefit analysis. And between the updating of the leaderboard and the production of the walk files, 3 walk files per location updated on a daily basis during that last week, the estimate was around 300 people hours spent on the reporting. And and looking at that as about $50 per hour in terms of what the cost basis of a person. So you're talking about $15,000 of time and opportunity cost of that time spent doing these routine data pulls. And implementing the bots and putting these data flows was cost half that, and is reusable for next year. So you're freeing that $15,000 of time next year for more opportunity. So that's how we look at the cost-benefit analysis.
Yep. So another question asks, and I'm assuming the answer is yes, are the bots only relevant to creating leaderboards? What are some other applications within the peer-to-peer context that you see for bots?
Sure. And it's fun. We've done some brainstorming, around what becomes possible with bots. And there's a few things. Like, one is, and it's a natural, is expanding and enhancing the reporting on the walk to begin to take the data on a daily basis that's coming in, looking at who is trending towards their goal, who's not trending towards their goal, and creating target segments to be able to push back into Illuminate or push back into other areas. For example, looking at the low performing, the 25%, the lowest 25% who've set a goal and aren't meeting that goal, is to be able to identify those people and potentially match them up and push out to them distinct emails to prompt them and give them tips and guidance. That's one way where bots could be taking that data, warehouse data, and creating deciles of performers to encourage people through different marketing automation email streams based on how someone is performing. Some peer-to-peer fundraising systems support that type of messaging, but many don't. And so by having that warehouse, you can create marketing automation. A second application, which is kind of way out there, but an interesting one, is using the list of people you have who are your runners or your walkers, and using that list to push over into Facebook or Google Ads and target their friends to support their campaign, doing personalized display ads. We've seen this with organizations who do it around advocacy and other fundraising, but to essentially support your walker through saturation banner advertising and Facebook advertising and promoted posts and things of that nature, where you're able to use your list of people in digital media promotion. That's another one. A third one is to where you are getting people to register and, for example, giving mobile number and permission to contact them by mobile, cooking in on a temporary basis a mobile messaging platform to be able to combine email push with mobile push as a way to stimulate your walkers on fundraising efforts. Sort of weekly reminders by text, have you done this, have you done that, in combination with email, gets them on two different channels, really thinking about and acting on the things that they could be doing to be raising money. That becomes possible because you're freeing your data from the core system and creating it in a place where you can push messaging out through different platforms. Those are just a couple of ideas.
Wow, well, that is great. And I imagine that you probably have bots doing all of your household chores, your taxes, all of your correspondence. So we've got a couple of slightly technical questions. What was the info from Razor's Edge that was sent?
Sure. The information from Razor's Edge was people and their donations, so that we could get offline donations and marry that with the online donations in order to have a complete picture of the donations.
And I'm not enough of a data geek to know whether you just answered the next question, which was, and if the info was sent from Razor's Edge, what was the unique identifier?
Good. Because there's a couple of ways that matching can be done. In this case, because for those who are familiar with Razor's Edge and Luminate Online, the Reload connector does bind the person in Luminate with the Razor's Edge ID. So that's one way we were able to connect, is that assignment was already done through the Reload connector. We also did matching, so that was the first match. There's a second match criteria of matching email to email and checking first name and last name to make sure that those align and binding that way. Some systems don't have that connector, and so Frakture bots have a matching routine where we look to match by email, first name, last name, postal. Email sounds like first name, last name, postal, match on address. There's a whole matching algorithm to combine records from different systems, and once that original match is made, and that's one of the one of the jobs that bots can perform, is that deduping and matching.
Mm-hmm.
Once you make that bind between two systems, then within that warehouse functionality, you keep that bind together and can flow data back and forth between the systems through that connection.
So this question is, any thought given to showing week-to-week changes by movement, by teams, or by individuals? In other words, they went from 5th place to 2nd place.
Well, it's hard to say because for people who register online prior the event, because you can register online or at the day of the event. So anyone who is on the national leaderboard would be those who are registered online, and among those people we have about 6,000 people, and that means we have 6 different behavior, and they all fundraise in different ways. Well, there are not 6,000 ways of fundraising, but you see what I mean. And some people will fundraise $5 here, $5 there, but others will create a fundraising event where they will fundraise about $2,000, and then they will record this on their personal page, and as a result, they can pass from the 5th to the 2nd place quite easily. So it's exceptional when it happens, but it happens, and it's not exceptional. It happens maybe 5 to 10 times. I would say that you can find those big fundraising events just for the walk, which is an event in itself. So yeah, there are movements.
Yes, got it.
And it's a great question, and I'll just throw out, like, this is what becomes possible, right? We have the data set of each team and of individual fundraisers and how much they're raising, and that's refreshed every day. So the potential, absolutely, you could plug that data into a geographic map and show, you know, a bubble size for a walker based on how much money they've raised, or a bar chart kind of tracking the top 25 over time as they go in and out and who's on top. There's lots of different ways to display that data beyond just the, you know, beyond the list to show more of the activity and the trends. It becomes possible because the data is no longer sort of stuck in the core systems. You now have it in a very usable database to do all kinds of mapping and graphing and charting with.
Well, we are through our questions, and so we're coming to the end of our session. I want to thank our speakers who did a really excellent job. Really fascinating. I was not familiar myself with using bots in this way, and it's already got me thinking about ways of getting rid of some of the drudgery and applying that time to higher use projects. Thank you to both of our speakers. Thank you all for joining us. Please note that if you're going to be joining us for the next conference session, you're going to need to log out of GoToWebinar now and log back into the next session, which is at 1:30, using the link and dial-in number that you received via email. And again, you'll find this information at peertopeerworld.com. Thank you all, and have a nice half-hour break.